The Young and the Restless spoilers. Even though Sally and Billy have technically broken up, their story on The Young and the Restless refuses to stay buried. There is still a pulse under the wreckage, a stubborn, inconvenient hope that keeps resurfacing every time they share the same air. Billy is the one pushing that hope back into motion, not with grand speeches or dramatic ultimatums, but with an almost desperate insistence that what happened between them is not the full truth of what they could be. He is trying to win her back, and the most dangerous part is that it's working, at least a little. Sally, who has always prided herself on seeing through charm and recognizing patterns, feels herself softening anyway. She is moved by his gestures, not because she forgets what he did, but because she remembers what it felt like to believe in him. That's the trap, and fans can sense it from a mile away, not the romance itself, but the cycle. The fear is not that Sally will love him, it's that she will love him in the exact same way she did before, hopeful, forgiving, and slowly erased her on the edges by Billy's appetite for risk. Sally did not leave Billy because she stopped caring. She left because caring was no longer safe. For a long time, she tried to translate Billy's recklessness into passion, his impulsiveness into bravery, his obsession with power into some kind of temporary detour on the way back to her. But detours have a way of becoming destinations when the person driving refuses to look at the map. Billy's pursuit of control, the hunger that eventually helped him take hold of Chancellor, didn't just take his time, it took his attention, his judgment, and the quiet promises he made without realizing he was making them. Sally watched him become more consumed, more convinced that one more push, one more gamble, one more strategic move would secure his future and justify the collateral damage. And the collateral damage, of course, was her. It wasn't that Billy didn't love her. It was that he loved the thrill of proving something, especially to the people he's spent his whole life trying to outmaneuver, more than he loved the calm, steady work of protecting what he already had. Sally didn't walk away in a dramatic storm. She walked away with exhaustion in her bones, the kind that comes from repeatedly asking someone to choose you and watching them choose the fire instead. The tragedy of Sally is that she understands ambition. She understands the hunger to build something that proves you're not disposable. She has fought for her own identity too many times to judge someone for wanting power, but Billy's power chase doesn't look like hers. Sally's ambition has always been creative and survival-driven. She wants to make something real, something lasting, something that no one can take from her with a smirk and a vote at a board meeting. Billy's ambition, on the other hand, often feels like revenge dressed up as vision. It's fueled by old wounds, old humiliations, and an almost compulsive need to show the world, especially the Newmans and anyone else who has ever looked down on him, that he can win. That difference matters because it changes the cost. Sally can live with a man who has goals. She cannot live with a man who treats her heart like an acceptable down payment for his next battle. When she left, she wasn't punishing Billy. She was trying to save herself from becoming the kind of woman who keeps shrinking her standards just to stay loved by someone who keeps moving the finish line. And yet, even the most careful decisions become fragile when two people sit across from each other and finally speak with honesty instead of defensive posture. Sally and Billy met again, and what was supposed to be a conversation turned into something far more intimate, an autopsy of their relationship, a long night of confession, regret, and the kind of quiet admissions that only happen when both people know they've already lost something precious. It wasn't a quick check-in or a shallow apology. They talked for a long time, the kind of long that drains the ego out of a person and leaves only the raw truth behind. Billy didn't just say he missed her, he let her see the shape of the loneliness that followed her exit. He let her see the part of himself that is terrified that he will always ruin what he touches, that he is destined to turn every love into another failure he can't outrun. Sally, for her part, didn't just scold him. She admitted what it cost her to leave, how she has been trying to convince herself that walking away was empowerment when it also felt like mourning. She remembered out loud the version of Billy she fell for, the man who looked at her like she wasn't a trophy or a strategy, but a partner with a mind that matched his intensity. That kind of conversation is dangerous precisely because it feels like growth. It feels like change. It feels like the moment where everything could finally shift into something healthier, something more mature. When both people articulate their feelings clearly, Fans want to believe it means the pattern is broken, but sometimes clarity is just the calm before the relapse. Because emotions can be honest and still be incomplete, apologies can be sincere and still be insufficient. Billy can mean every word he says in that moment and still wake up the next day and chase the same adrenaline that destroyed them. Sally can acknowledge the tenderness between them and still be walking into the same trap with her eyes open. That's what makes this reunion attempt so emotionally loaded. It contains real truth, and real truth can be used to rebuild or to manipulate, even accidentally. By the end of the night, the air between them had changed. They weren't fighting anymore, they were remembering. And memory is one of the most seductive forces in soap storytelling because it does not show you the full timeline, only the highlights that make the pain feel like a reasonable price. The evening ended with Sally and Billy kissing, and that one act, simple on the surface, carried a complicated weight beneath it. It wasn't just chemistry, it was grief and hope colliding. It was Sally admitting, even briefly, that she still wants him. It was Billy grasping at the proof that he hasn't completely destroyed his chance. The kiss looked like reconciliation, but it could also be read as a relapse, the first slip back into a cycle that both of them know too well. That's exactly why the audience reaction has exploded. On Reddit, fans are already bracing themselves for what they believe is coming next, and their frustration isn't born out of cruelty, it's born out of fatigue. Viewers have watched Sally fight too hard for her independence to be reduced to someone else's emotional support system. They have watched Billy self-sabotage so many times that his romantic gestures now feel less like proof of love and more like proof that he hates being alone with the consequences of his choices. When one fan pleads, "Please don't, be strong, Sally," the subtext is clear. They are not just rejecting Billy, they are begging Sally not to betray herself. They don't want her to mistake intensity for stability again. They don't want her to become the woman who keeps returning to the same storm because she misses the lightning. And the show is smart enough to understand that this is where the real drama lives. The most compelling version of this storyline isn't a simple reunion or a clean breakup. It's Sally standing in the doorway of her own future, hearing Billy's voice behind her, and realizing that what she wants and what she deserves are not always the same thing. It's Billy trying to convince her and himself that he can be different, while the world around him keeps offering him opportunities to fall back into the most addictive part of his personality: conflict. Chancellor isn't just a company in this context, it's a symbol. It represents the thing Billy believes will finally validate him. And if Sally returns to him before he proves he can prioritize something other than validation, then she isn't stepping into love, she's stepping into a power struggle where she will always be second place to his need to win. So what would it actually mean for Sally to think carefully before deciding? As the warning goes, it would mean she stops judging Billy by his moments of tenderness and starts judging him by his patterns of behavior. It would mean she asks herself not whether Billy loves her, but whether Billy can protect her peace. It would mean she accepts that a kiss is not evidence of change, and a long conversation, even a beautiful, honest one, is not a contract for a healthier future. It would mean she draws a boundary that is more sophisticated than "I'm leaving" or "I'm staying." A real boundary in this case would be, show me consistency. Show me that you can hold power without letting it poison you. Show me that you can fight for something without destroying the people who love you. Sally's strength has never been in her ability to endure pain, it has been in her ability to reinvent herself after pain. The question is whether she will mistake endurance for loyalty again. Meanwhile, Billy's pursuit becomes its own test. If he truly wants Sally back, he can only pursue her heart. He has to confront the part of himself that keeps turning love into collateral damage. He has to recognize that his need for power isn't just ambition, it's a coping mechanism, a way of outrunning insecurity by constantly chasing a new victory. And if he doesn't break that cycle, he will inevitably pull Sally back into a life where every promise is followed by a crisis. That's why fans are anxious, because they know Billy can be sincere and still be unsafe. They know Sally can be smart and still be vulnerable. In the end, this is the kind of storyline Y&R thrives on, not a romance, but a choice. Sally is standing at a crossroads where one path offers the familiar comfort of Billy's intensity, and the other offers the quiet, terrifying freedom of letting go. Billy is standing in the wreckage of his own decisions, holding out his hand like an apology, like a lifeline, like an invitation. The kiss at the end of the night is not the resolution, it's the spark. And the question isn't whether they still have feelings. They do. The question is whether those feelings are enough to build something new, or whether they are simply the gravity that keeps pulling them back into the same collapse. And if Sally takes one more step toward Billy, she has to decide whether she's walking into love or walking into the beginning of another lesson she's already learned the hard way. Even after their emotional conversation and that lingering kiss at the end of the night, the situation between Sally and Billy remains far more complicated than a simple romantic reunion. The moment may have felt hopeful, but hope alone cannot erase the deep fractures that already exist between them. Across the fan community, especially on social media discussions and forums, viewers are fiercely divided about what should happen next. Some people still see the spark between Sally and Billy and want the writers to nurture that connection into something lasting. Others, however, feel protective of Sally's independence and worry that returning to Billy would only drag her back into the same painful cycle that forced her to walk away in the first place. One viewer summed up this frustration bluntly in a comment that quickly gained attention among fans. They argued that Sally deserves far better than Billy and that she should stop wasting emotional energy on him. According to that perspective, Sally should be focusing on protecting her career and the company she worked so hard to build rather than giving Billy what they sarcastically called his 43rd chance. That comment may have been exaggerated for dramatic effect, but it reflects a growing sentiment among viewers who feel that Sally's storyline should prioritize strength and independence instead of repeating another round of romantic disappointment. Yet the story is not so simple, because another group of fans continues to believe strongly in the chemistry between Sally and Billy. For them, the tension, the arguments, the emotional confessions, and even the mistakes are part of what makes the relationship feel authentic and exciting. These viewers argue that the connection between the two characters still carries emotional electricity that is difficult to replicate with other romantic pairings in Genoa City. They believe that if the writers carefully rebuild the relationship instead of rushing into a reunion, the couple could actually become one of the show's most compelling partnerships again. One fan expressed this optimism clearly, saying they genuinely hope Sally and Billy find their way back to each other because the romantic chemistry between them feels natural and powerful. In their view, the problem has never been the connection itself but the inconsistent way the storyline has been written. If the narrative allowed Billy to truly grow and forced him to confront the consequences of his actions, then Sally and Billy could evolve into a stronger, more mature couple capable of drawing even more support from the audience. That belief keeps a portion of the fandom invested in the possibility of reconciliation, even when the story seems determined to complicate things further. Still, the reality inside the narrative is far less romantic than the hopeful interpretation some fans hold onto. The evening between Sally and Billy may have ended with a kiss, but a kiss does not erase betrayal or restore broken trust. It simply reminds both of them that the feelings between them are still alive, and that is exactly what makes the situation dangerous. Sally is not struggling with whether she loves Billy. In many ways, that part of the equation has never been in doubt. The real question hovering over their future is whether love is enough to rebuild trust after Billy has repeatedly demonstrated how unpredictable and impulsive he can be. Billy's pattern of behavior has already placed both their relationship and their professional lives in jeopardy more than once. His reckless pursuit of power did not only threaten their romance, it also endangered the stability of Abbott Communications, the company that Sally poured enormous time, effort, and personal identity into building. For Sally, Abbott Communications represents far more than a job. It represents validation, independence, and proof that she can succeed on her own terms in a city where reputations are often fragile and alliances change overnight. She believed in Billy when he convinced her to invest her energy into the company. She believed in the shared vision they created together, trusting that the business partnership would strengthen both their professional futures and their personal bond. But that belief collapsed the moment Billy abandoned the promises he had made to her and shifted his focus entirely toward gaining control of Chancellor. In Sally's eyes, that decision felt like a betrayal on two levels at once. It was not just a romantic disappointment but a professional one. Billy had essentially placed his hunger for power above the stability of the company she had worked tirelessly to support. The realization forced Sally to confront a painful truth. The man she cared about might never be able to prioritize their shared future over his personal ambitions. Now Sally finds herself standing at a critical crossroads in her life. The merger between Abbott Communications and Newman Media has created a new chapter for her career. It represents a fresh opportunity to focus on long-term professional success rather than being pulled into Billy's constant battles for control and influence. The partnership with Newman Media gives Sally a chance to stabilize her position within the highly competitive corporate environment of Genoa City. Instead of reacting to Billy's impulsive decisions, she can finally concentrate on shaping her own future and proving her value within a powerful media organization. For someone who has fought repeatedly to rebuild her reputation and secure a place in the business world, that opportunity carries enormous weight. It symbolizes a turning point where Sally could finally move beyond the chaos that has often surrounded her romantic relationships and focus on the stability she has always sought. Unfortunately, stability rarely lasts long in Genoa City, and Billy's presence alone threatens to disrupt the fragile balance Sally is trying to maintain. Even if he genuinely regrets the choices that hurt her, his actions continue to ripple outward in ways that could once again place Sally's career at risk. Billy's current entanglement with Chancellor and the ongoing power struggle involving Victor Newman creates a situation where business decisions are deeply intertwined with personal vendettas. If Billy makes another impulsive move, especially one driven by loyalty to his family or his long-standing rivalry with Victor, the consequences could easily spill into the corporate world where Sally now operates. The situation becomes even more volatile when considering the larger conflict unfolding between the Abbott family and Victor Newman. With Victor reportedly responsible for Jack's kidnapping, the stakes have escalated dramatically. Family loyalty has always been one of Billy's most powerful motivators, often overriding logic and caution. If Billy becomes convinced that reclaiming Chancellor is the only way to rescue his brother, he may once again throw himself into a dangerous power play without considering the collateral damage. Such a decision could reignite the corporate war between the Abbotts and the Newmans, dragging multiple companies into a conflict that extends far beyond simple business strategy. If that scenario unfolds, Sally could once again find herself caught in the crossfire of Billy's decisions. The merger with Newman Media might appear secure on the surface, but the shifting alliances within Genoa City's corporate elite make every business arrangement vulnerable. Should Billy and Phyllis succeed in completing their takeover strategy and Victor ultimately regain control of Newman's empire, the consequences could cascade through the entire corporate landscape. In that kind of upheaval, positions shift quickly, loyalties change, and people who once seemed secure suddenly find themselves pushed aside. Sally knows this better than most. She has already experienced the instability that comes from relying on powerful partners whose ambitions constantly evolve. That is why the question of whether Sally should return to Billy becomes more than a romantic dilemma. It becomes a strategic decision about her future. Returning to Billy might offer emotional satisfaction in the short term, especially if she still believes in the connection they share. But it could also expose her to the same pattern of instability that has repeatedly threatened her career. If Billy once again becomes consumed by a battle with Victor or another corporate conquest, Sally might find herself sacrificing her own ambitions in order to support a man who cannot stop chasing his next victory. In the end, the uncertainty surrounding Sally and Billy reflects a deeper tension within the story itself. On one side lies the undeniable emotional bond between two people who still care deeply for each other. On the other lies the harsh reality that love does not automatically create stability or trust. Sally may still feel drawn to Billy, but she also understands the cost of letting herself become entangled in his chaotic world again. As Genoa City braces for the next escalation in the conflict between Victor, Billy, and the Abbott family, the future of Sally's career and her heart may soon collide in ways she cannot fully control. And if Billy makes one more reckless decision in his quest to defeat Victor or protect his family, Sally could once again pay the price, losing not only her relationship, but the professional future she has worked so hard to secure.